Well, hello everyone. Here, show you right here, talk about for Adobe Creative Cloud, and this right here actually shows right here of like any type of accounts, like stuff as like a kind of like a it's a basically a store, and I'm sure most of us when we were young and thinking is to where by every weekend or so that we're going to be what you call paid a certain amount of allowance. If it's going to be maybe like something like $10 a week, something like that, for an allowance. And you have right here to talk about for the Creative Cloud, for Adobe Creative Cloud. And what I'm to want to talk about right here is and based on the information I went updated of course on in the screencast library that I add in right here are talking about for like basically like for anything related to monthly payments based on for the cloud. And then I know that there's some of the videos that you mentioned about is toward that that anything about what you call your prices that we could that we basically paying about every 30 days or so each month that we could be paying on average about maybe $20 or so a month just to have access to the cloud. And if we were to actually work the math, that seems like it's that if it's going to be about maybe $50 a month or up to $20 a month or something like that, for anything related to like what you call membership, or if it's anything related to any type of discounts or something like that. But anyway, but you see right here is that with this what you call this account, for like store that for anybody like Warren, to where that this right here would be example right here of me right here. And if I were to be what you call introducing the cloud right here, the cloud right here is you're like Warren to where that if we will be thinking about, we can remember going into our bedrooms, and then we will be finding something, maybe going into the toy box just to find something to play with, and thinking about a number of things that you might find in the closet or maybe underneath your bed or somewhere in your room, and thinking that something that you would want to buy or check out, or anything that's really related to anything about what you call anything that that will interest you especially. And you're like thinking that like really that what are examples of how we can explain about the Adobe Creative Cloud. And with the the Creative Cloud is thinking necessarily to word it that with this cloud right here that we want to look at is that whenever I was young, that I include this right here. Talking about for the candy bar, and here I say that I'm sure most of us when we were very young, we have experienced going to the store, to buy some candy or maybe a soda, maybe some chips or something like that, maybe some pretzels, something to snack on. And or like Warren Torres, the Adobe Creative Cloud maybe about is similar to where that whenever you buy like maybe a renew membership, or maybe pay like a certain amount just to have a certain amount of storage. And another thing I want to mention too is about the Adobe Creative Cloud is that if you want to look at it is toward it you would have like an account where it would be like an online desk, like a little office area where you have access to the variety of tools and stuff, but the programs that are offered through the cloud. And and you're like Warren toward it, that especially if you're going to be working it out from the school or maybe from a job, about is toward to be able to have access to the cloud. And you may have heard that before, toward it, it's about maybe $20 maybe each month, or up to $50 or so a month, just to be able to have it if you want to have extra storage, and then if you want to have access to a variety of different things, such as if it's going to be a store, or if it's updates about anything about Adobe products, and maybe anything about for any other programs such as the tools and ways of how to fix images, any programs that are going to be offered through there. And you're like Warren Tour that really I went ahead and drew this right here as example right here between buying a candy bar and buying the actual program, based on if it's going to be any type of degree, if it's going to be for web designing or any type of a graphic designing software, or if like anything says for digital design and a 3D animation or anything like that, any programs that you're going to have access to from the cloud. And do we look at that as to where like just like buying a candy bar. I'm like, whenever you buy a candy bar, especially if it's going to be what you call in a big, king size candy bar, and thinking necessarily to her, oh, that's enjoyable. And then by the time you have access to the cloud and think about it to her, that that I'm sure, back whenever I was about maybe 10 years old. I can maybe say that going through those catalogs and anything that you would pick out anything that maybe that you would like to have, and sometimes even say as to you hear from your parents about as to where that yeah, we need to have a credit card, or you have to be a membership, you need to have a membership pass or something like that just to be able to make a purchase from there from that store. So we may have heard quite a few reasons to why maybe we couldn't buy anything from the catalogs. One of those would be is to where, well, you're not old enough really to have an account on there. So I really not sure about how old you really need to be. I would say at least 16 and a half, maybe 17, 18 years of age or so, just to be able to have access to the cloud. And for any type of arrangements as well, for if it's like, for somebody co-signing or so, but still that for anybody who's going to want to have access to the cloud, and you have right here is an example right here of a wallet. And so anything about what you call a student's career that by warrant, or yeah, that anything about what they more likely would carry in their wallet, they have access to during it, a lot of the time, if you're going to be going anywhere, maybe to a meeting or some sort, and thinking any source of identity or anything, any source of information, just to be able to get signed on to the cloud, if it's going to be by mobile or if it's going to be by desktop computer or laptop, any other type of device that you're like warrant, or anything that you can carry in your wallet, and if it's going to be electronically. So that's just the way I think about it. That whenever I look at this image right here, and tell you by here, yeah, it's like to zoom in here. I can go ahead and see here, zoom in right here. Just you're using the Photoshop program right here to zoom in. But this right here would be an example right here of me right here, and if in this picture right here, that the way I drew myself standing there is right next to the cloud, and anybody that may want, or yeah, that draw yourself if you were just you're quite a bit younger and like a little bit of facial hair, and thinking it's like hello, welcome to the cloud, something like that, and then and for like anybody and whenever you're gonna have an online account, that you're like thinking necessarily to where that a lot of these programs other than Microsoft Paint that you would like to have access to, maybe like online storage. So you're like thinking about between the television set and maybe the computer and like anything of which call online accounts, that you're like thinking about as to where they really are you going to have maybe more fun if you're going to be watching TV, or maybe gaining access to your own Adobe account, your Adobe Creative Cloud, and being able to have access to learn the tools and then the different programs, as well as having your own online storage. And if anybody wanted to, where does that really seem really appealing to you? Is like for you think that that's really what you call real neat, to where that maybe other people that you may talk to and kind of tell them about it, and about the account, and you have right here is like, yeah, like example right here of a wallet. And so you're like thinking about is to where that being able to have access to your own account, and kind of like a desk. And if you want to look at it like a little office desk, to where you have access to the materials that you need to have, and for being a designer, that with these programs, with the number of tools that you would have access to, and you're like worrying toward it really that if it's really worth what you call the, everybody say that they get their opinion about is that if it's worth $50 or so a month just to be able to have it, and then to have access to like yearly subscription. But the way I think about it, I'm like really that yeah, it's a if you think that you really are going to use the program, and then from how it's handled especially, and just thinking about it's like for Adobe Creative Cloud, that whenever you have access to it, that you just like just click and download whatever the programs that you may not you've been waiting to have installed on your system, and then the ones that you think that look pretty interesting. And whenever you have access to the Creative Cloud, that basically means is to where that you have access to any updates that you proceed with the programs, any latest edition of the programs, and as well as anything about what you call possibly it's like that jobs, job offers, and as well as for for like a portfolio. And if anybody wants us towards, you have access to like a portfolio. Yeah, if it was on for your Adobe ID, you have access to like a portfolio. So basically, that it seems like that you are pretty much you are paying just to be able to gain entry, and as well as for like a membership fee, just to be able to have this. But I keep thinking this to where, like, if in case if anybody asks, is that whenever we go to the store, and it may be like any other type of office appliance store, if we would be going to the store in general, and just think about to have access to try to go to look in the at the software programs, and we can maybe think as to where that we see the prices between $400 and $500 it is just to be able to buy the programs alone, and think for up to 1 to 2 years for only up to 1 to 3, maybe up to 1 to 5 PCs or something like that. Up to 1 to 5 PCs are max, and thinking as to where that about how much money that maybe that you could be spending compared to actually buying it at the store. And you're like Warren toward it compared to that, you're buying a candy bar, and candy bars that some of them that may fill you up for how tasty they are, and you're like Warren toward it but up to about the $4 or $5 for a candy bar, or maybe up to close to maybe $7 or $10 for one of those big gigantic candy bars. And thinking it's about that much, possibly is like about that much, about every 2 weeks, about that much you'll be cost just to be able to have access to the Creative Cloud. And sometimes it's like just for that, and plus taxes as well. So we're talking about close to $50 it would be just to be able to have access to the Creative Cloud. And we're like, Warren, we're really, does that seem fair enough? But still, I mean, say about any other opinions as well. But this activity right here basically talks about for access to the Creative Cloud, and if anybody Warren where any type of access to the Creative Cloud, and second necessarily to where that you have access to the Creative Cloud, and with the Creative Cloud, it's basically like an online store, and walk into the store, and you pick out anything that you want to get, and then it's like goes like for proceed to checkout, as well as for downloading and installing it onto your system, and you would be able to launch the program, and then be introduced to the new tools that the program has to offer. And so that's just the thing that I could probably say, if I could spend maybe like say that that I probably use these programs almost every day now, but still that for anybody who's gone and just be checking it out on it the Adobe Creative Cloud, and they're like saying that there's only maybe one program that they use for the most part. All the other programs, or what you call, are just there, but still that for the amount of for the package, and plus if you want to call it like a membership fee, to where that if you want to have a certain amount of a storage, it's like if you're going to have like online storage. But if anybody wonders as to about how old do you really have to be just to be able to have an Adobe ID, and I would probably say at least 16 and a half, maybe 17 years of age. So if I would have been able to have access to this back when I was about maybe 10 years old, I could probably say that maybe every around late at night, especially on the weekends, I would want to get on there, and maybe if I want to post some of my work, and as well as check out some of the programs. And during that time, of course, if the Adobe Creative Cloud would have been offered, I'm sure it would have been pretty expensive too. But I say that maybe about close to $250, maybe it is just for a membership, or if they would have had it to where that if anything, maybe it would have been. Maybe if it would have been available on the Mac, like I'm not sure. I'm like for whatever programs that were licensed to whichever operating system. But anyway, but talk about for the Creative Cloud, and talk about for the accounts, and as well as for store. That if you want to look at it, it's like for the Adobe Creative Cloud, you look at it as like a store. You walk into the store, and then it's like with like you have right here as an example right here the wallet, and with this wallet that like I say is to where that by the time a student graduates and based on their experiences to where they have is right here is like a wallet to where you're going to be carrying that to call that career for anywhere you go, and like knowing about the source of identification, any source of information based on from by your experience for what you have, just to be able to have access to the cloud, and then for how much you know about using the programs as well. So that's just the thing about having access to the Creative Cloud, that if anybody wonders as to where, yeah, what kind of cloud do we think that we can maybe touch? And you're like wondering to where that, yeah, you see clouds in the sky and some of them that you just want to kind of reach up and touch them. It's like, but still, that the top of a Creative Cloud, and I was also thinking about while I was working this, this could also be represent like maybe a type of map of location. So yeah, after you have access to the cloud, and then there's like what you call a certain a certain location of the cloud where you can go into just to be able to have extra storage, and as well as if you want to buy something, and if you're going to be what you call want to share some of your work, and as have other access as well, and for like anything about the Adobe Creative Cloud, that think about anything that you're creative as well. It's like for how you manage it. So this right here, that I could probably say, yeah, welcome to the cloud, and then for my portfolio as well. And I'll see what I can do about updating more of my portfolio as well. But that they have right there is like talk about for welcome to the cloud, and you're like Warren toward it, yeah, that if you could have access to this back whenever you were young and thinking about what do you think that you'll be using it for? I'm like, well, anything I would maybe look at as like maybe kind of like an activity book, but still that the type of a career to where basically that you have access to the tools and as well as the settings about how to fix data, and then any source of images, and as well as managing the graphics, and then improving any source of a 3D, it's like any source of clip art, especially, and that any source of artwork and projects that you're going to be working on, that you would have access to those programs and those tools just to be able to work with what you want to manage, especially. So we're looking at my freehand drawing work right here using a pen and scanning this right here and using a paint bucket, then I'm like wondering to where really I'm like, could it go any further other than what you call using the paint brush, and as well as anything else that I want to go ahead and add to this so I can have access to the tools, and notice like, yeah, for welcome to the cloud, and whenever you're whenever you renew the subscription, if you want to call it the subscription, that I think as to where, yeah, that they say, well, that's that usually costs that cost you like just to be able to have access to the storage, but still that sometimes like a lot of times with the Creative Cloud, that usually it's about a yearly plan to a monthly plan, and we were to where that just to be able to have access to that, and for I guess if you want to call it like you're basically are improving you're building your career and knowing about for how other professionals get to know your work as well. But that is to where about understanding more about the Creative Cloud, like for designing work. So May 25. So thanks for watching. Have a great